on the institution level, there are 3 leading accreditation standards. The largest one, AACSB, was already founded in the first half of the 20th century. I think it was 1916 or thereabouts. And to this day, AACSB has remained, if you will, the accreditation standard of choice for American business schools in particular, although many other business schools around the world also have the same standard. It does feel somewhat different from, say, the EQUIS standard, which is provided by EFMD, the European Foundation for Management Development, which is based in Brussels. And that was set up as really a European kind of standard for the development of business schools. And although it has spread, it's still an order of magnitude smaller in terms of membership and accredited schools than is the case with AACSB. So for example, internationalization is something that would be very explicit in the EQUIS standards and in the whole philosophy of EFMD. And that's a result of them being in Europe, which is really a collection of many countries, with 28 countries belonging at this point to the European Union and further European countries obviously being outside of the European Union. That's a standard and an objective that is less emphasized. It's not totally forgotten, but it's less emphasized, less heavily emphasized by a standard such as AACSB.
So can I ask about these accrediting bodies? They seem to drive a lot the business school landscape as well and how they're perceived. And on the one hand, you emphasize the great diversity of business schools around the globe. Don't these standards then sort of limit that, or,
To some extent they do. They rein that in a little bit. And that's a legitimate criticism, I think, of accreditation standards. So I think they fulfill dual purposes. On the one hand, they serve an extremely positive role. And I think that positive role outweighs its limiting or negative aspects, if you will. So the positive aspect is that they really provide quality and assurance of quality in a market that is by its very nature somewhat intransparent. Right? For all intents and purposes, education is a service activity. And with services in particular, it is hard for the participants, the students, also the businesses, to know exactly what can be and what will be provided. If you take, for example, a degree program at a particular institution, what the differences are between different institutions. And so accreditation services provide a mark of quality and assurance that whatever it is that you would get actually adheres to a certain quality standard. To some extent, that is obviously also provided by national accreditation and quality management systems or quality assurance systems. However, with respect to business education, obviously it's a highly international market, and the nature of that activity is highly international. So you need those kind of accreditation standards. Also, I must say, I'm very active as a peer reviewer, in particular for EPAS accreditations, EPAS European Program assurance systems. So they're provided by EFMD. And by visiting these different schools, I've learned tremendously much. And so they also serve the purpose of spreading good practices. Sometimes even best practices, but at least good practices across different schools. And you just learn a lot from these other schools that are part of your kind of competitive environment. They're more friends than competitors. And I think that's a very, very positive function. So they define quality, and that's helpful for all the actors, all the stakeholders in this context, whether that's students, whether it's businesses, whether it's faculty members or parent institutions as well. A legitimate concern or criticism might be that they actually limit also innovation. They might actually limit kind of out-of-the-box thinking. Obviously, they are trying to do all sorts of things in order to limit that downside as well. But that could be a legitimate criticism of the work that accreditation organizations do.